What's up, everybody? It is Josh with the Rainmaker.
And TJ Hollywood.
And here's another one of those tutorials. We're going to break it down today. We're going to be talking about punches. Bunches of punches. Bunches of punches. Woo. Punches being the basics. We're going to dive into a lot of things. The basics of punching, the 3 stages of a great punch, and the muscles that you use while you're punching them, and why they are important to work.
A lot of important information.
A lot of important information. We're going to go deep into punches because we want you guys to be as knowledgeable as possible. And really, I want to be as knowledgeable as possible. And so when I do these, I go and do a whole bunch of research. TJ does a whole bunch of research. And the best part is we focus on different things, and then we come together, and it's like, boom. Beautiful masterpiece of knowledge. That's right. So let's start with the basics of punching.
Basics of punch.
So there's 2 different types of things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about punching like with gloves on, like if you are in a studio or you're doing sparring or a fight or anything like that. And the other part we're going to be talking about if you don't have any gloves on and how to punch properly so that you don't hurt yourself. So starting with, I guess, gloves off because we don't have any gloves on right now. So basics of punching. I'm going to get nice and close. Good. All right, nice and close. You're going to have an open fist. You're going to curl your fingers in. Curl those fingers all the way in. You shouldn't be able to see your fingernails.
Yeah.
And then you're going to bring your thumb on top. You're not going to bring it all the way up, and you're not going to bring it all the way to the side, and you're most certainly not going to put your thumb in your hand. That is how you break it. Yeah, that's how you break a thumb really quickly. So you curl your fingers in, you place it up top. Something recently I've learned is you want to keep your thumb about the side of that hand, because when you press sideways, you're going to activate all of the muscles in your wrist, keeping your wrist stable. So again, you curl those fingers in, you tighten right there, nice tight fist. That's how you punch.
And in case you didn't see it, that was a double curl. So it's not just kind of bringing them all in.
Oh, yeah,
it's actually bringing the tips of your finger in the top of the palm, and then from there, curl it the rest of the way in. That gives you a nice tight fist.
Really
helps
tight
keep your
fist.
hand safe. I'm assuming you're doing punches correctly.
Yes. Always, if you are ever on the street and you have to fight for your life, the ideal is you don't punch them at all, because, you know, heads are hard and fists are hard, but they're not as hard as heads. So there's a whole bunch of self-defense. We'll go into that, I'm sure, in a different type of thing. But for the general, if you ever need to punch someone, you bring those fingers in, you have that nice tight fist, you keep your wrist straight. So let's go with the basics of all punches, I guess.
Yeah, so wrist straight.
So wrist straight.
Definitely a good one.
Definitely.
You know, whether it's jab cross, which is a straight arm punch, so obviously you have a straight wrist for those.
Right.
But even your hooks and uppercuts, which are bent arms. So that hook, your elbow is bent and it comes around, right? Whether it's a body hook or a head hook. But even though my elbow's bent, I keep my wrist very straight. Because if I throw a nice solid hook and my elbow's bent and my wrist is bent, guess what? All the impact stops right at my wrist.
That's right.
That's how people have extremely sore wrists later. That's how they get injuries, all that good stuff. You're not going to last very long in a fight if your wrists are bent one time.
Oh, yeah. I actually won hit for hit with my brother because his wrist gave out.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, my wrist hurt now. I'm like, oh, you should have practiced better for.
Exactly. That's right.
That's a silly game. So
it is a silly game.
So straight wrist, even with the uppercut. So again, that elbow's bent. You're hitting the bag. We know we go right to the belly of the bag. So that wrist is straight in line with the forearm, right to the elbow. But even if I'm coming upwards to the chin, still straight from the wrist down to the elbow. This allows the impact, again, to travel along your arm.
Exactly. And when the impact travels up your arm, so does the power and the momentum bringing you a stronger punch. So we have straight wrists. We have hitting with the front 2 knuckles.
Yeah.
We went over there.
Very important.
Very.
If you're not wearing a glove, like you say, if you're in a street fight, obviously the goal is not to get in a street fight. But if you end up getting one and you want to minimize the chances of breaking your hand, you need to have a good fist and make those front 2 knuckles your point of impact.
Yeah, you got to literally point those knuckles.
The bones in your hands are all fairly small, but those 2, they actually go right into your forearm bone.
That's right.
So it's a much sturdier brace of impact. Whereas if you hit with the side of your hand, those bones are more likely to just shatter and break. That's how you see some people break their hands.
And that's why it's called a boxing fracture, because you will. I actually did this in one of my fights. I hit him with a hook with my pinky, and I didn't know it at the time, but later I found out that I broke my hand on his face. Again, faces are hard, people. Try not to punch them without gloves.
Funny, my sensei in high school for karate, he always told me you knew someone who knew how to punch because they would have scarring and stuff over the front two knuckles.
That's right.
If you see their whole knuckles are messed up, chances are they're not
just
trained
Yeah,
fighters.
they're probably just beating something.
Not so good.
So so now those are the basics. Again, hitting with the front two knuckles, keeping your wrist straight. And what was the last?
The tight fist.
And the tight fist. That's right. All right. So 3 basics of any punch: tight fist, wrist straight, and what did we say?
Front two knuckles.
Front two knuckles. Man, I am all over
Which
the
again
place.
is important for wearing gloves and not wearing gloves.
Exactly.
So even if you're wearing gloves, yeah, that glove's padded. You're hitting usually a bag, which is padded, but you can still hurt your hand. So even with the gloves, and to make sure you're practicing properly, make sure it's the front two knuckle, which would be, the side near your thumb of the glove makes contact with the bag. So that way you're going to be definitely safe, and if you ever have to throw a punch, you're used to throwing it the correct way.
Exactly, and that's a major thing. I mean, if you have big gloves, or maybe you're hitting a bag and it's kind of a softer bag and you're just kind of going through it, you might not injure yourself on a soft bag, but as soon as you hit like a heavy bag or a person, that form is very important, especially if you don't have gloves on. So same basics for gloves on or gloves off, but it's even twice as important if you don't have gloves on because you have less protection for you.
There's a reason to say, perfect practice makes perfect.
Exactly.
If you practice without perfect form and then you jump to a sparring match thinking oh, I'm practicing for years, guess what? All your bad habits are going to come out in that fight. It's not going to go well.
Exactly. So there we have it. 3 basics is front two knuckles, wrist straight, tight fist.
Boom.
Now we're going to go over the 3 basic punches, which are jab cross. I'm going to link those together because they're both straight punches,
straight arm.
hooks, and uppercuts. Now, jab crosses. Let's just get them 5 seconds. So left foot forward, right foot back. The jab is with that left hand. It's straight punch. So again, 3 basics apply to this. Front two knuckles, wrist straight, and nice tight fist. You punch it straight forward. You aim those front two knuckles, but it's a straight punch. Pow! A good straight punch is rotating your hips and your shoulders, even your legs a little bit, to rotate into that punch. Every single punch is not just your arms. If you're just sitting here punching with your arms, you're going to have really no power. And TJ said something really funny earlier, and it 100% makes sense. If you think legs aren't your punch a bag standing, and then sit on the ground and punch a bag.
Yep.
And see the difference in
100%.
that power.
A punch is your whole body.
Your whole body.
There's a lot of muscle groups that lead to the power, to the speed, to the stability, all that good stuff in your punch. So yeah, your quads, your calves, your hip muscles, they all contribute, especially if your punches have pivots.
Exactly.
Everything but
the jab does. And even like I said, the hips and the shoulders and all that rotate with that jab. Nice sturdy jab. And a lot of boxers or a lot of fighters will actually step into their jab, and you don't step if you're not using your legs.
yeah, which again, that step isn't because it's going to help your arm generate more power,
Yeah.
because that step generates power,
Exactly.
which translates into your arm.
So very important to remember that punches are not just your arms. They're not just your arm muscles. So jabs and crosses, they're the straightforward punches. You pivot on your cross, generating power from those legs to your abs, to those arms for a nice, powerful punch. Straightforward. Bam. Palms straight down with those jabs and crosses. Very important because that's going to make you aim with those front two knuckles. So next we're going to go over some hooks. Hooks are even more important with your legs because you pivot on both of them. So one more time. Bang, bang. Pivoting with that. Turning that entire side of that body into that punch. Very important. Again, not just your arms. You're not just swinging. This is a lot less powerful than that whole body.
And I'd also like to clarify, it's not just this either.
Yes.
I see it happen a lot.
Yes.
People, they hear pivot, so all right, I pivoted. This is, yeah, sure, that's a pivot, but it's not doing what it's supposed to do. My pivot should be this.
The whole body.
Calf,
whole body.
quad, hip, oblique, shoulders, arms. These are all the muscle groups the power travels along to generate a powerful punch.
Exactly. Chain reactions. Every move in kickboxing is a chain reaction of muscle groups. And as that muscle group activates and transfers, it actually gets powerful and more effective.
Which gives you a better workout.
Which gives you a better workout, which is important if you're doing cardio kickboxing or fitness kickboxing, but it's also important if you're trying to transfer that power to someone's body in a fight. So again, hooks. Now there is 2 different ways to do hooks. I like to do it, we like to do that hook thumb straight up. So that way your wrist is straight, you turn into it, you can hit with those front 2 knuckles. Some people like to turn their hand actually sideways, which you can do. I don't like doing that because even a small calculation and you can hit with that pinky, and again, that's how you break a hand. So it's up to you whether you do the hook with the thumb up or the thumb towards you, but I recommend doing it thumb up because you can aim a little bit better and it's a little less chance of hitting those pinkies.
I noticed that thumb towards you also is usually more common in the head hook as opposed to body.
Exactly.
So like you see fights a lot. Sometimes I'm not even something. Is that a cross or a hook? Because it's just like boom.
It's
but generally the rotation
sideways.
motion, like, all right, it's a hook. But the idea is that the punch, the hand was very simple.
Yeah, and the reason that I think about it is like if me and TJ are fighting and I'm aiming for his chin and I aim with those front two knuckles, my pinkies and those last couple knuckles are completely safe. If I'm aiming for his chin and I'm like this, I have to really make sure that I'm hitting with those front two knuckles because even, like I said, a little bit of calculation and there's space behind those other two.
Like I said, one miscalculation could now put you in a chance of injury.
Exactly.
Why risk it, right?
And if you're in a fight, whether it's on the street or you're in a ring, if you break your hand, that's not good.
I mean, maybe you got really good pain tolerance, but guess what? You're not going to be able to punch with that hand anymore. So you're definitely limiting your ability to win the fight.
Exactly. So we have jab crosses, we have hooks. Oh, another thing with hooks is elbow should be pointed sideways. Whether it's a body hook or a head hook, you don't want that elbow pointed down. Because again,
very weird position.
Yeah, not only is it a weird position, but you're either going to have to slap the bag or the person, or hit with the bottom knuckles,
or really bend that wrist,
or really bend that wrist.
Straight wrist.
All of those are no. Again, front two knuckles, straight wrist, tight fist. Those are 3 points. And if in any punch you lose one of those, you are increasing your danger zone dramatically. And you never want to injure yourself.
You have a bad punch.
Yeah,
best case scenario, your punch is not very good.
And that's not close.
That's best case scenario. I don't want that as my best case scenario.
So again, elbow pointed sideways, elbow bent,
nice
thumb to the sky, wrist straight, and again connecting with that nice tight fist. Those are good hook. Whether it's a body hook, your elbow's still sideways, just a little lower, or a head hook, that elbow is in line with that arm going straight over. Next, we're going to go over uppercuts. So uppercuts, when you are not training on a bag, is straight to the chin. And just because it's an uppercut does not mean you don't use your legs. Again, going up, it's even more important to use your legs.
Oh, yeah.
Because legs generate massive amount of power. So if we're doing an uppercut and I'm just like, ugh, and I'm just using like a rock'em sock'em robot type of uppercut, it's not going to do a lot of damage. If I get down a little bit deep into that and I drive the power through that leg, through that pivot, lift that heel up with that pivot and just drive straight up, that's a lot of power, a lot of
really
muscle.
crunch that oblique up. You know,
Exactly.
I really love that power you get from the oblique muscle. Just crunch and then launch it up to that chin height.
Exactly. So when you're doing that, again, it's good to just kind of drop your legs a little bit, bend just a little bit, so that way you can extend up.
Boom.
You don't want a big drop. I mean, if you're ducking a punch and you're going into an uppercut, I mean, they just gave that to you. But you don't want to drop really low, because if you do and you're in a fight, they're going to know something's coming from down there. So again, just a little drop, and as you do it, you pivot. You drive off the ball of that foot as you twist, using those calf muscles, those leg muscles to drive that uppercut into the chin, and that's a beautiful punch. Now on the bag, we do uppercuts to the body. Now you can practice uppercuts on a bag too, but you're not going to connect if you're doing an uppercut. Sometimes when I'm doing bag work, I will go around the bag and I will go straight up if I'm practicing one to the chin, because that's about technique and stuff like that. But generally, I'm on a bag for working muscles, so I'm going to connect to the body. And this is also called a shovel hook sometimes. So it's kind of different. It's uppercut to the body, or you're just driving that punch straight in. Still very effective.
But the main reason we have people do that shovel hook is safety.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, unless you're really talented, really know what you're doing that upward punch on a bag, again, it's going to end up having your wrist bent.
Yeah. And if I'm on a bag practicing my uppercuts, I'm not going to hit the bag when I go up. I'm going to go up the bag like this, straight up. I'm not even going to connect with the bag. I want to like kind of slide that glove against the bag, but I'm not going to connect, because there's not a lot of ways that you can connect in this position without leading to badness. Yeah, it's just not good. So good uppercuts. Again, your elbow's bent just like a hook, but instead of being out, it's down. Wrist is straight, tight fist, front 2 knuckles. You get a pivot, and you get a little bit of bounce with those legs. Again, engaging tons of muscles and adding a lot of power to connecting uppercuts.
You know, something we didn't bring up that's important with all these punches that I notice happens a lot with uppercuts and hooks is there's really not a lot of setup.
That's true.
You know, in a fight, you want your punch to come out lightning quick, so A, you don't give your opponent time to, you know, stop it.
Move, yeah.
Stop it, to move, to block it, whatever. And B, so it generates more power. So with all these punches, especially the hooks and uppercuts, I notice a lot of times people will kind of load.
Oh, yeah.
Your elbows should
not
never come behind your body in
Exactly.
any punch. I even see with jab cross sometimes. Sometimes they'll see where in that cross, they'll bring their elbow back and then launch it in. Sure, from like a cartoony perspective, it seems like one of those like why I gotta, you know? But it's not going to work well in a fight, and it's wasted energy. You need to conserve energy in a fight.
Exactly.
So with the jab cross, it shoots straight out from the
Pow,
shoulder. With the hooks, the elbow kicks out and then goes in. So it's not like I bring it back and go in. I just kick it out and go in. And again, same thing with the uppercut. I'm not going to wind it up back here to launch it up back here. That's just, it's silly. It's silly. So I just drop it slightly if I'm going into a head hook. And again, on the bag, I'm going to bring it down just
a little bit.
Elbow height straight in.
Exactly.
Like never behind the body.
So that's a very good point. Not only is it going to waste energy, if I'm fighting you and every time you do a cross, I see that shoulder go back before it goes forward, that's a telltale sign, and I'm going to get out the way before. And not only am I going to get out the way, but I'm going to step in, and that's going to be the end of it. So you never want to give your opponent any more time to react than they do, and that's exactly what is going to happen. If we're fighting and every time you throw that cross, you bring it back before it brings us forward, I'm going to know about it. You might feel like it's giving you extra power, but if it misses your target, then not only are you not hitting them, but you're also using all of that extra power, and now that just turns into energy that doesn't go anywhere.
And worse, an experienced fighter not only is going to see it coming, so yeah, they can get out of the way, but more likely they're going to use it against you. So if they see that loading up, they're going to decide to throw their own hit they know you're not going to be ready for because they know exactly what you're doing.
And that is really a big difference between people who are good at fighting and people who aren't good at fighting is they will load up. It is something you have to train out of because your body's going to naturally want to do it to produce power, especially if you spend a lot of time on a heavy bag, you might be doing it as well. So whether you're on a bag or you're fighting or you're sparring or whatever it is, try to resist the urge to bring it back before it's forward. Not talking about kicks today, but we also see that sometimes with front kicks where people will step back before stepping forward. And again, it might feel like there's extra power, but it's a total waste of time. And I'm going to be way out of the way before it comes to me.
Oh, there's a front kick coming. Let me just, boom.
Let me get out of the way. All right, so that is your jabs, your hooks, and your uppercuts. Now we're going to break in the 3 stages of a great punch. So great punches are not just using your whole body. There's 3 stages. So one is the explosiveness, the explode out of the gate. The third is kind of a relaxing point where you kind of float the muscle, the energy, that explosion you've already used. And the third point is a secondary snap or a secondary contraction of muscles at the very end of that punch, which stiffens and you snap it back. So it's the explosion of turning that body. So like if we were doing a cross, it'd be the explosion of me turning my entire body into that punch. The third stage is floating out because I don't want to use a lot of muscle right here. I don't want to muscle that punch. I want it to throw out. And then the very end, I'm going to snap. I'm going to tighten that fist, snap it straight back.
You know, it sounds kind of like if you took a wet towel, wound it up, you whip it out, you let it float, and you snap it back.
Exactly.
Exact same concept.
100% the same concept. That's a beautiful analogy because that's exactly what it is. If you don't have the snap, you're just going to flick them with the end of a wet towel, and that's not going to do anything.
Yeah, maybe it's a really heavy towel. It might be like, hey, that was annoying, but it's not going to be that
Exactly. It's not going to be that KO fight-ending hit, and that's for sure. And that's something we see a lot of times when people are kickboxing is they'll throw a really powerful punch, but they'll just let it stay out there before they bring it back. And you want that snap because that's the tightening of all that muscles, and that's where the power really transfers into that
Plus,
second.
if you're in an MMA fight or a street fight and you're leaving your punches out there for too long, that's just an invitation for your opponent to grab it and take you to the floor with it.
or just get out the way, and
Yeah.
that's your defense right here. You can't defend
Face is
and
all
offend at the same time, really. So if you're just having your hand out there, you're just in a world of trouble anyway. So again, that explosive, that initial blast off of that punch, you float it, and like TJ said, you whip that towel, snap it out. And we say hit with a tight fist. You do not have to have your fist tight the entire time. You can or you should only have that fist tight as you connect. The reason why is because when your fist is tight, your muscles are activated. That is using oxygen and energy. So you'll see it a lot. People will have that tight fist and they'll just beat the bag, or they'll try to fight someone. And they're gonna get tired fast. When you do it, that snap, that is where you have the tight fist. You can have a loose fist until you go to punch, and that's when you tighten that fist up. That's a really proper punch. If your muscles are tight, if you're just having a tight fist the whole time, you're using oxygen and energy, and that's going to tire you out a lot faster than being loose and relaxed. Great fighters are relaxed until that point of impact. And you'll see a lot of them like goofing off or dancing and stuff like that. It's because you have to be relaxed. A tense body is using oxygen and energy, and you need both of those things to fight someone. Or you're not gonna last. That's just how it goes. So again, 3 stages: explosion, relaxing, and the snap at the end, tightening that fist, tightening those muscles, those shoulders, those abs, those legs, because it's that whole body, and that's that transfer of energy to end that fight with that KO. Blow. All right, let's go into something that's really cool, and a lot of people don't think about the muscles behind punches. Again, we talked about the full body going into it, but TJ is my muscle man. He's going to break it down on what muscles we're using, why we're using, and why they're important to train. So first of all, what muscles do we use in punch?
Well, the most common and obvious one is your bicep, right? So a lot of people, a lot of fighters, especially boxers, they want to have that big bicep. That's going to generate a lot of power, a lot of speed, plus it's intimidating. You
It
got
is.
a big ol' arm, especially the untrained person's going to see that big ol' arm and be like, oh, that's going to be a strong punch. But a strong arm is only going to be as strong of a punch as the muscles that back it up. So from the bicep, the arm, you also need strong shoulders. So that means you need your rotator cuff, the deltoid. All this area is actually the foundation for that strong punch. It's going to help you deliver the power from the body into the punch, and it's going to help you keep that energy going. From there, you also have your lat muscles, so latissimus dorsi.
Whoa,
lat.
getting fancy.
That is going to actually what keeps you from wearing out fast. So a lot of people, especially if they're new to boxing, you know, they think they're doing a lot of punching, they're going to have really tired arms. They end up feeling sore and tired right up into the lats. It's going to help you, again, translate the power. It's going to really do that. It's going to help also bring balance, which then ties into the core as well.
Exactly.
So core muscles are great for balance, they're great for poise. You know, it's going to help you deliver power from your whole body, keep you standing, which is really important. If you're throwing powerful punches, it's really easy to actually lose balance, especially with kicks.
Oh, yeah.
And if you
Never
lose balance, you're going to lose that fight pretty quick.
That's not a good thing to do.
So speaking of power on the punches, though, those obliques are really causing a lot of power in that punch, especially on those hooks, those uppercuts. That pivoting motion uses those obliques to transport power from the legs and the core up into, again, the lats, the shoulder, and the bicep. So you need a strong core to balance everything out and to generate power.
Yeah.
So the core is a very important part.
Two very important things.
And again, as we talked about earlier, the legs do generate power for your kick. Like you said, if you punch it back standing up, you're going to have a much stronger punch than if you punch it back sitting down. That's because with that pivot, as that foot turns, and assuming you're doing a pivot correctly, your leg turns with it, the calf muscles generating power, going up to the quad generating power, going up to the hip muscles generating power, and then again to those obliques, lat, shoulder, bicep, arm, boom, all into that punch. That is a lot of generated power. But again, this is why technique is so important.
Very important.
You don't pivot, you're missing probably more than half your power realistically because the legs are so strong and powerful.
Exactly.
You lose a lot of the balance, all that good stuff. So people think about punching and think like, oh, I need strong arms so I can punch really hard. And that's so far from the truth. You got to work everything.
The entire body is
100%.
important in that punch.
So, you know, you're only as strong as your weakest link at that point. So
Exactly.
basically level yourself up. Where you're feeling yourself weak, you want a stronger punch, don't just wait for the bicep. You know, work on those shoulders. Get that core strength.
If you have a weak core, you're gonna
You know, honestly, the core is what you want to have stabilized first. In my opinion, you need a strong, stable core. Again, this has nothing to do with size either. A lot of people think, you know, if I'm a real big guy, I'm going to generate a lot of power. Yeah, big muscles generate power, but you need mobility, you need all of this stuff. So if you're really big without mobility or really big without core strength, your punches are going to land flat. They're not going to be super big.
Exactly.
Basically, the only power in your punch is the weight behind it, which, as we talked about, there's a lot more technique involved to generate.
Well, and like you said earlier, we were talking about this, and he was like, if you have big muscles, you're also soaking up a lot of oxygen. Big muscles take a lot of oxygen to use. So if you have a lot of big muscles while you're fighting, I mean, you want every ounce of oxygen, every ounce of energy to go into the fight. And if your body is just using it up, just standing there, your stamina is going to be depleting pretty quickly.
That's why a lot of boxers especially, they do work their legs, but they don't go for size in the legs. Because like you said, if I got big old legs, my heart's going to just pump a lot of blood down there, a lot of oxygen, and I can only breathe in so much oxygen. So I want to divert that to the muscles that I need. So I'm going to have strong legs, good stamina, but I'm going to put more size into my arms, my shoulders, my core stuff.
Very, very important to work that whole body. Keep it, and like he said, like we've been saying the whole time, the most important part is having your technique down. So I've been doing a lot of scientific research behind punches, and force equals mass times acceleration. So there's only two ways to get more force behind your punch, and that's either to increase mass or increase speed. Now, if you're a little guy like me, I focus on increasing speed because I really have zero chance trying to increase my mass. I've tried it a lot. It's just not working. So I go for the speed part. And even if your mass is up there, the slower your speed is, that's going to affect that force. Definitely. So you need some mass, but you also need that speed. You just can't have big muscles because, like you said, that'd be like throwing a big, heavy wet towel, and it might hurt when it hits, but it's not going to be the snap.
It's not going to have that massive sting. Exactly. That quick return. It's so much better to have good technique.
Exactly.
And then have the foundation behind it, as opposed to just going, I'm going to get big in the gym and then just fight someone because I'm big.
Exactly.
If you're fighting someone trained, unless you get real lucky and land a very quick shot to the head, even then, you're probably not going to get the power to do that.
And plus, they'll probably be faster enough to just get out the way. You could go on YouTube and find hundreds of videos where it's like a muscle builder or something like that versus a trained fighter. The trained fighter's going to win like 99% of the time unless it gets some random lucky. And that's probably because the fighter was being dumb and was like,
And speaking on that, the one thing I didn't mention is the heart.
Ooh, heart.
Yeah, so
very,
very
important.
And all those muscles is great, but like I said, if you're just a bodybuilder in the gym and all you do is lift weights, unless you win that fight in the first minute, you're not going to win because you're going to tire out. You need cardio. That's why fitness kickboxing is so great for that, because you're going, 3 rounds, 8 of them, 9 of them, 10 of them. You're going non-stop. Your heart has to be able to keep up with what your muscles are doing.
Exactly. Again, oxygen and energy, very important. The last fight I trained for, I was running every single day, and like every 3 days it was sprints. So really trying to get that cardiovascular system up, and that is very important. You're using a ton of muscles like we were talking about. If your technique's good, you're using a ton of muscles, you're using a ton of oxygen, a ton of energy, and you have to have the stamina to last all of those rounds until the end, because the chances are, unless you're very, very good, you're not going to get that beautiful like 1 round KO you see in UFC. And even in UFC, these are professional fighters. You see that one every like 10 fights.
It doesn't happen most of the time.
Exactly.
Most of the time you go multiple rounds. A lot of times it's not even by knockout, it's by points, which technique is what's going to get you there.
Yeah, technique is definitely there, and the
stamina to stay up.
Because if the last fight, if your stamina goes out the window, you're going to be slow, and not only are your movements going to be slow, but your punches will be slow. And if you have one person who's in the gym training for strength and all that stuff, and one person's training for cardiovascular, unless they knock them out, like I said, in that first round, the cardiovascular system is going to win, because in that 3rd round, that 4th, the 5th round, the other person's going to be very slow, and the other person's just going to light them up from there. So basics of strong punches and winning fight. Again, you got to have a tight fist, punch with the front 2 knuckles, wrist straight, technique. Always the most important.
Always.
And make sure your cardio's up, because you're going to want that in those later rounds. You're going to be tired. Don't get me wrong. There's never a time where you're going to be at a fight and you're not going to be tired. But if your cardiovascular system's up, you're going to be less tired than the other dude. And that's really what it comes down to.
100%.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, we really dove into these punches a lot. So, that was awesome.
Yeah.
So if you have any other questions on
Any other
punches, you'd like to
questions?
reach out to us, we'd love to go over more into detail with that. But that's about all we got.
Yeah,
Punching.
and again, those were the basic punches. Yes, there's Superman punches and spinning back
Oh, yeah.
fists and stuff like that.
And other forms of other
and a
things,
lot of
too.
other forms. We're focusing on either boxing and kickboxing and stuff like that. So those are the basic punches of those. As we go through, we will talk about other punches, like we have a Superman punch out there as well that you can dive into. But this is a really amazing video on the basics of punching, stages of punching, the muscles you use, and how to use them properly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That was fun.
That was fun. That was really cool.
All right.
Educational for me. I hope it was educational for you. Stick around. We will see you next Tuesday for another tutorial, and we will give you all the secrets that we have to.
And we'll see you tonight
And we'll
for
see
a
you tonight.
15-minute live hit workout, 6:15 sharp.
And the best part is it works all of your muscles and
And
your
the heart.
cardio. So everything you need for a great fight,
Yep.
we're going to bring it to you for 15 minutes at 6:15, guys. So we'll see you guys
Online.
Bye.